Hi, everybody. Welcome, hopefully welcome back to Janie's Way, the space where emotions run deep and stories unfold. In today's episode, we have the privilege of diving into the extraordinary journey of Kristina Driscoll, the heart and soul behind She's Brave podcast. Get ready for an emotional landscape as we hear her story, from navigating the depths of sorrow and loss to achieving monumental success, one courageous step at a time. Kristina takes us through the darkest moments of her life, highlighting how resilience and determination can transform grief into strength. Discover the pivotal role that taking small, intentional steps played in Kristina's path to success. This shows us incredible impact of doing what feels right for you step by step. This is the first part of a two-parter. So here we go. Hi, I want to welcome Kristina Driscoll to Janie's Way show. I'm so delighted and so excited to have a conversation with you, Kristina.
So thrilled to be here, Jeannie.
Kristina is a host of She's Brave podcast. And guess what? She is top 2% globally within 1 year. That's such an amazing achievement, Kristina.
Thank you so much, Jeannie.
Congratulations. I'm so excited for you. And that's an incredible achievement, an incredible journey. So for the people that are not familiar with your story, can you just give us a snapshot of your story?
Yeah, I would say one way to describe me is unconventional. I've led a somewhat unconventional life, and it really started with hiking on Mount Rainier, which is a gigantic mountain outside of Seattle, when I turned 30. With a hiking group, stepping out of the car and locking eyes with the hike leader and just having this magnetic pull. And his name was Bill Driscoll. And I elbowed my way to the front of the single file path on the trail so that I could get to know him better. And it was just kind of one of those magical things where you really instantly click with somebody. And within 6 months, we were married. The unconventional part is that he was 24 years older than me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But I had done a lot of spiritual work on myself in my 20s, really searching spiritually, through churches and through books and through health, self-development, and really working on myself. And I think that by the time I met my husband, I was really living my authentic life. And so, you would think that with that big of an age gap, and especially like my husband had never married, he had never had kids. He was actually a bit shorter than me, but so handsome. And, no one ever questioned us. No one, even his family, ever questioned us and said, gosh, isn't she a little young for you? Or gosh, isn't he like a little too old for you? I think people really, really just sensed that we were sure in our decision and that we were authentically connected in love, loving each other, and we just belonged together. And it was beautiful.
That's amazing. Was it love at the first sight, you think?
Yes. I think I didn't believe in it until then. But that did happen. I don't think love at first sight is necessarily the only way that you fall in love with people. It can happen all different kinds of ways, but that was the one and only time that happened to me. And we looked at life the same way. We both were financial advisors, and we had so much in common, and we had so much fun. And we really wanted a family, but we had serious infertility issues. So our only son was born 4 years later. And looking back on it now, I feel like that was a bit of a blessing because we had those 4 wonderful years of just the two of us really enjoying life. And then our son was born. And of course, that was a whole new chapter, which we embraced and loved. And people used to say to me, "Oh, you only have one child. Are you gonna have another?" Or when he was older, "Why do you only have one child?" And I would say, "Oh, you don't understand. I won the lottery. I was looking at no children. I was looking at none, and I won the lottery. I got my child." Although, to be completely honest, we were looking at adoption in India and China and also in America and working with an adoption attorney at the same time. So we were definitely going to be parents, whether they were biological or not.
Mm.
Yeah. But then life took kind of a more serious turn. When our son was 5, my husband developed early onset Alzheimer's disease. And that was a really challenging time.
Wow.
Dealing with that, coming to terms with that, realizing that I was going to have to be a single mom to my son and be a caregiver to my husband. And yet that felt like it was the right thing. Like, to society standards, I was a nobody. I was just a mom. I was just a caregiver. I wasn't, making tons of money. I wasn't on TV. I wasn't famous, whatever. But I also just intuitively knew that this was my spiritual path, and I just embraced it and said, this is a phase in my life, and I'm going to learn and grow from it.
Mm. That's such a powerful turn in your story. How do you think that story shaped who you are now?
Wow, that's such a great question. I think that one of the things that happened when my husband was first diagnosed was that I was super, super anxious. And I love to tell this story. It's really transparent, it's really personal, but I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, and I didn't know what to do.
Wow,
So
it's giving me goosebumps to just listening to it, because it was only what, 5 years into marriage, and that happened after you guys were just so happy, and most of the people probably be devastated and just buried in their depression and anxiety. But it doesn't sound like that's what you did.
I started out that way and I couldn't even think straight. So what I love to tell this story, because if you're in that position right now listening to this podcast, I literally just got in the car and drove to the emergency department. And one of my dearest friends' husband is an ER doctor. I was praying he wouldn't be there. I was so embarrassed to be there. Of course he was there. He couldn't treat me because he was a friend, but he did pop in to my room and say, "I'm really glad you're here. What you're going through is incredibly difficult, and it takes a lot of courage and bravery to ask for help. And we're going to do everything. We're going to help you. You're going to be fine. You're going to get through this. And I'm really proud of you for being here." And so that helped me a lot. And so I I believe in medicine. I believe in traditional medicine. I believe in alternative medicine. I did all of those things, and I did therapy. I did therapy all 12 years, and I was able to learn and grow and become a strong person who was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder at that time.
Oh yeah, no way, really? How we never guessed that.
Exactly. I know. Like, who isn't going to be diagnosed with an anxiety disorder in that situation?
Yeah, I know. Well,
But I like to tell the story because I think, people can sometimes say, "Oh, well, I've been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, therefore I'm just going to be a wreck for the rest of my life." But I didn't believe that. And I always believe that my late husband used to always say, "There's always a way." With whatever you're doing in life, there's always a way. So just keep going, keep trying things. And one thing that I stumbled on accidentally, right at that time, was Oprah had a book club back then,
Mm.
and the book of the month was A New Earth with Eckhart Tolle,
Wow.
and he wrote the book The Power of Now. I didn't understand it. My brother had given it to me. I was like, this book makes no sense to me. But I took her book club. I joined her book club, and it was like a new technology thing back then where she and Eckhart would get on together live on the computer, and they would go through the chapter, and then they would answer questions. Like, you could literally call in or write in on the computer, and then they would answer all your questions for that chapter. And so it was one chapter a week. And by the end of the book, I understood the power of now,
Mhm.
because if you live too much in the past, I could have spent a lot of time living in the past of all those happy times and those years of us before he got sick. Then you end up being depressed. If you live
Mhm.
too much in the future, you're trying to control your future, and then you become extremely anxious. So when you learn to live in the now, you can actually be peaceful and happy. And I'm not saying it happened instantly. It's not like I just went through the 10-week, course with her and Eckhart and everything was magically better, but it was something that I was able to work on and gradually learn how to live over time. And I also learned through therapy that this was my spiritual path and I was honoring my spiritual path. This was meant for me. The universe was conspiring in my favor. Things in the universe weren't happening to me. They were happening for my own benefit and my own spiritual growth.
That is so true. When you were talking about it, it reminded me a similar situation with me when my mom died. We never been separated. I was the only child, and we were doing everything together, like literally, like sisters. Like we were in separate. And then when she died, within 6 weeks, we were going to the gym 6 days a week, and it within 6 weeks she wasn't there. She was gone. She passed away from stage 4 progressive gastric cancer. This is the first time I publicly talk about it. You trigger me to be more vulnerable because it's difficult. I was the only child. It was just me and her all the years. We had lots of fun experience. We done all kinds of crazy stuff together. She and I wrote and produced Two Ladies musical show together, and we performed together. It was so much fun. And all of a sudden, she's not there. She was my world. I wasn't married. There's no kids. How do you think that felt to me? I was devastated. It's my world crashed. Like part of me was gone. She was like my sister. That's the strong relationship we had. So of course I was diagnosed with anxiety and the doctor put me on the depressant, which had the opposite effect. It lasted like for a week. And my husband to be, which he is now, tells him, you throw those pills out of the window. Because I almost want to tell him to get out of the house. We weren't married then. It had an opposite effect. So I had to ditch the pills and kind of figure out the ways of dealing with it. Did it happen overnight? No. Has the anxiety comes in and out? Of course. But seeing the things, then there is another way, and taking increment step every day and trying to figure out what works, what doesn't, by using different tools, listening to the expert, following spiritual paths. When you said it, I can color it to my life, because that's when I felt my spiritual journey has started too. And I think about 6 months to a year, I realized, well, there's something else. So there's still more to life, and she will be happy to see that I'm doing well. She doesn't want me to suffer and be sad. So little by little, I'm starting to feel better. And I've tried so many different tools, and I finally figure out that being now in the moment and just cherishing the memories that we had and looking forward to a future and just taking steps every day is what brings us joy. So,
Absolutely. So
wow.
beautifully said.
It's like amazing. I've never publicly talked about that part of my life.
What's so interesting is like I think we carry secrets inside of ourselves, things that we're ashamed of.
Yeah.
And I never told anyone about the ER room experience for like almost 20 years, believe it or not. And then when I started podcasting, I don't know, one time it came out and I just realized that, for one thing, when you speak the truth of who you are and the things that you've been through, it loses its power over you, of the worry of people finding out, or what are they going to think, or and you it loses its power over you when you actually talk it out. It's not as big of a deal. And who knows, like, how many people we can help by just saying, look, I went through this, I came out the other side, I'm living this beautiful life, and you can too. And that's what we've both said.
Absolutely. You lost the love of your life. To me, my mother was my sister. She was my world. And was it challenging? Was it sad? Did we had to go through grief? Of course, the natural part of the life. But once you come on the other side and reach out to people for help, friends, experts, whatever you need to do, and realizing that life is about contrast. It's not going to be all positive sunshine and roses, but you can come on the other end and create again and love the life and live joyfully and inspire other people, because you've been through difficult challenges in your life, and it's okay. You just have to get through it and take one day at a time. So that's, and revamp yourself, so to speak. Like, there's a positive and a negative. The positive part of it, I think, part of the reason I'm doing podcasts is to honor her in a ways like, I finally told the story, and I didn't realize it until this very moment. This is the reason why I'm doing it, because I want her to smile, and I myself is going to cry now to see that there is something better on the other side.
There always is. Yep. Yep. And that's a big part of my story too, was, literally reinventing myself. And the person that I am today is, really different than I've had a lot of different phases in my life. And I think we can change and grow at any point. We can pivot at any point. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
For the listener, you see the tears are still there. It's still sad from time to time, but cherishing those moments, and allowing the feelings to just flow over you, and remembering the great moments, saying, I reinvent myself, and here I am. And here's the tissues, realizing that it's going to be okay. You just have to take one step at a time and create. I think the biggest thing for me is putting your energy in something positive. You have to figure out what you want to create. And once you figure that out and allowing your passion to flow, it will light you up. And then you look at the moments that you spend with the loved one that no longer physically with you. You realize that they're there with you and they're smiling at you.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow, I didn't expect that. What a great moment. Apparently I really needed to feel it. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Christine.
Yeah, absolutely. You're totally on the right path. And the things that you said are so powerful and they're so true. And, you are now in your next chapter. It's just this incredibly exciting, beautiful chapter. And
it's
amazing to watch.
Yeah, is it sad? Of course it is sad, but you have to celebrate. Would there have been ups and downs and challenges along the way? Absolutely. But who you are, and your uniqueness, you should allow your uniqueness to shine and use that as your superpower no matter what you do. And the people that were part of your life, they're the one that installed that uniqueness, and you have to allow other people to see it, because that's how you celebrate those experiences that you had with the people around you that inspire you to be better you. You carrying their memories and carrying their experiences to the world, even though they are no longer with you physically. They still with you.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure.
Wow, what a turn in the conversation. Totally unexpected. It's real. Speaking of anxiety, how do you set yourself for success every day? Is there a certain routine that you do that set you, I don't want to say free, keeps you grounding, keeps you connecting to yourself and in alignment with your emotions and your passions?
Yeah, great question. About a year ago, right around the time I was starting my podcasting journey and taking a podcasting course, my podcast launched on my late husband's birthday, January 2nd, 2023.
Wow.
I learned about a book by a guy called Hal Elrod, and it's called The Magical Morning or something like that. But you can just Google Hal Elrod on Amazon. And he studied the habits of many very successful people in America and asked them what their morning routine was. And there was a pattern of 6 different things that these people do. Now, do people do all 6 of them? No, most people actually don't do all 6 of them. Most people choose 1, 2, 3, or 4, but there's definitely 6 of them. And the book is so well written and it's so powerful because, from the minute you open your eyes, I think a lot of us think, good God, another day, instead of good morning, God, So it starts right from when you open your eyes. And even this morning, the first thing I did in bed, while I was still in bed, is I meditated for about 8 minutes. So that's the first thing that I do.
See, it doesn't have to be an hour, right, Kristina? 5, 7 minutes.
Yeah. And sometimes at the end of that space, thoughts will come into my head. So I always keep a notepad by my side to write like thoughts about my podcast and what I want to do with it next, or ideas, or even just something about my son or about the day. So inspirations will come through at that time. I also have a gratitude practice with a fellow podcaster, and it's actually like a formal practice where she sends me an email to a bunch of people every morning with her gratitudes and some really inspirational messages. And then I email her my gratitudes back. And that keeps me accountable. And it's 3. So it's not like you have to write a whole list of 10. And she has even taught me gratitudes of things I've never thought about. Like she'll talk about noticing the first bloom in spring, like the first flower that she sees blooming. Like that's one of her gratitudes for the day. And she's that is, I find that with gratitude for me, I needed some accountability, especially this first year to make sure that I did that. And so, yeah, I have some morning practices that I do, and it can vary a little bit. I do have like a 10-minute yoga practice. Again, it's 10 minutes because if it's 30 or an hour, I'm not going to do it. It's just very short, and it's amazing what little things like that, little micro things can make a huge difference in us. And I remember, talking about like big shifts in our life, like you were talking about getting over your mom's death, and for me, getting over my husband's death, my life shifted. My husband passed away a few years back, and then my son graduated from high school.
Yay.
In 2022. in that June. And then my husband and I got married. I met and married another wonderful man, and got married in July. And we went on our honeymoon. We went to Peru and promptly got a really, really bad case of COVID, really bad, and had to come home because COVID was really rampant a year and a half ago. Like people already forget, how it was, but it was still bad. Omicron 5 was all over Dallas, and we switched planes in Dallas, and the guy behind me coughed for 7 hours straight, because the mask mandate had just been removed, and we were all happy about not wearing a mask, but I got really sick. And, sometimes when we get really sick, that's just God's way of trying to redirect us, because had been feeling really unsettled and kind of uneasy, that uneasy, unsettled feeling that we all get. And what I have learned is that when you have that feeling, if you're having it right now, it means you are meant for more. God is telling you, the universe is telling you, you're meant for more. And so I had to rest for about a month. And during that time, I was feeling unsettled, and I realized I didn't want to go back to financial advising. My son had graduated. I was married. This was a new chapter, and this was going to be a big chapter in my life. I was 54 at the time. And that's another message is, age is nothing. I think we are meant to, after losing my husband, I realized my first, husband, I realized life is so precious. Don't take it for granted that you're just going to be around for another, 50 years, because do what you want to do now. Like now's the time. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do. And that's where I think a lot of people get stuck. They just think, well, I don't know what to do, so I'm not going to do anything.
So I'm not going to do anything. That's right.
It's what happens. And so the best thing you can do is take some kind of action. So in my case, I saw an ad for taking a podcasting class, and I said, I don't know what I think about podcasting. I mean, I don't know if I'll be good at it or not, but I'm going to take this class because maybe I'll meet some really cool people that will lead to something else. So I don't know if I'll podcast, or maybe it'll lead to something else, because action will always create more action, which then leads you to the thing that you're supposed to be doing.
Or it will show you what you don't want to do. Or you learn from your failures. So action always gives you some kind of feedback.
Yeah, the action always gives you feedback. So I signed up for the class, and at first I was really, really quiet. And I remember
quiet. You wait. Did you say you quiet? No.
Oh, Lordy. Yes, I was so quiet.
I really can't imagine Kristina being quiet.
Yeah, that's how intimidated I was. And so that's why I like to tell my story too, is I remember the morning after I had just signed up for the class. Class hadn't even started yet. And kind of having a feeling in the pit of my stomach, and like having some anxiety and thinking, maybe I can't do this. Like maybe this is just too much for me.
Okay.
And then I said to myself, another thought said, it's okay to have anxiety. Just like ride this out for a bit, see what happens. And within a few days, the anxiety had gone away. The class started, I was showing up, and
how about that? You keep going and anxiety goes away, right?
And and I think that's a big part of it too. Just because you have anxiety at the beginning of something doesn't mean that you're not meant to do it. And, that fall when I was taking that class, I attended a concert with Andy Grammer, who, if you don't know who he is, if you've heard, he has 5 like top hits. And if you hear him, you would definitely be like, I know that song. But a lot of people just don't know his name. But he does poetry. He's really, he's a philosopher, and his songs are very, very uplifting. They're just incredible. He's an incredible human being. And his story is really amazing. And I think it applies to podcasting. It applies to trying something new and all of that. He had been playing the guitar and singing on a street corner in Hollywood for 2 or 3 years and making a few bucks a day. And, he wouldn't give up. But one day at the end of the day, he was so freaking frustrated. And he came home that night and he just kind of like yelled at God. in his bedroom. Like he said,
Uh-huh.
God, I don't know what you want from me, but this I do know. I'm going to sing and play my guitar. If you want me to sing and play my guitar on the street corner of Hollywood for the rest of my life, fine. I'm going to do it. Or if you want something bigger for me, that's fine too. But I'm not going to quit. And so I kid you not, the very next day, he goes to the same street corner he's been going to for 3 years. And within an hour, some guy walks by, stops, says, I like that song. I like your voice. I like that music. I want to be your producer.
Wow.
And the rest is history. He's famous now. Like he's all over the world. And I think there's something to that. And I feel that way in podcasting myself. I'm going to do it regardless of the outcome. It's just something that I am called to do. And so I never looked at my statistics or my numbers when I began podcasting. It wasn't about that for me. It was about helping women in the world find themselves, find their authentic selves so that they could live authentically, because women were so worried about what other people think that often our whole life that we are living is somebody else's idea of what they think how we should be living, instead of us living how we want to be. Guess what? That's like living in a cage.
Yeah.
So you've got to live your life, make all your decisions, and don't care what the Joneses think, your neighbors. Doesn't matter what the neighbors think. Do what is right for you. Stay aligned. So I never checked my numbers. I just started podcasting and doing my thing. And literally one of my buddies, Karen Hall, you know her, who's a podcaster, called me up in May. I started in January, and she said, Kristina, do you ever check your statistics? And I said, nope. I've decided I don't want to get hung up on that. I don't want to get obsessed with that.
Sure.
And I don't want to focus on that. And she said, did you know that you're in the top 2.5% globally? And I went, what? Where? And she's like, go to listennotes.com. And then there it was. And so I think there's also a key component in, making big life changes and pivots and just doing it and not getting attached to certain outcomes. Like saying, oh, well, I want like 1 million downloads by February or whatever, like don't do that.
So what will happen in January? Will you be upset? I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
my point is sometimes when we don't even see how all of the ways we can, how many people we can reach, we can potentially limit ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also sometimes when we try really, really, really hard,
resistance comes in,
we
right?
push things away from us. We actually push them away. And if we have like a specific goal, it's very specific, that's not a good idea. We have to just, we can have a general idea about, we can have visions, and I found for me, to be 100% honest, like, in the class that I was taking, the podcaster was kind of pushing a little bit, like,
I think you mentioned that before. You didn't like that.
Yeah, well, you can have 10,000 downloads in a month, and you can do, why don't you set a goal? And it didn't feel right to me. And that's the other thing. Like if you write down, okay, I want, this, but you can't feel it. Like it doesn't feel true to you inside, then you got to scale it back to where it feels true. Okay, does 5,000, does 1,000 sound okay? Does 500 does 100 sound okay? I have literally built my podcast with baby steps, literally, let's see if I can get this person on, and then just stretch myself a tiny bit. Maybe I can get somebody with a little more influence on, not to say I'm always going to interview regular everyday people as well, but, just push my limits a little at a time instead of massively massive amounts of time real quick. I think that when you have affirmations and visualizations that you're doing as what's one of the Hal Elrod things that you can do in your morning routine is they have to be believable to you.
You have to feel them, right? Otherwise, it's have no meaning.
You have to feel it. It has to feel real to you. You have to truly believe it. So for me, it's really been baby steps, just taking like a little step and saying, well, I know I can do this thing today. And that's it. Like I can, and that's it. And then, okay, wow, I just did that. And every time
Doesn't it feel amazing when you have micro goals? And
micro goals. I love that word.
Well, I know how it feels because I just released the first interview and just like, wow, that feels so good. That micro steps, those micro goals, and kind of celebrate little wins. You don't have to go months.
Yeah, the micro goal actually gives you like a tiny boost of confidence. And so then you take another little risk step ahead, and then you get another micro boost. And then your confidence just basically keeps building and building until you don't recognize the person. Like I did a video that went viral hiking in the woods. It's had over 112,000 views.
Wow.
And just views, not like the likes are like 1,200 or something, but the views are like 112,000. But it was just something I decided to try out, and I didn't really have any attachment to the outcome. And it just, these things, like if you had told me a year ago all the things that were going to happen in a year to me, I wouldn't have believed that. Like if I had written down a year ago, do a reel that has 112,000 views, that wasn't believable to me at that time. So, don't start there. If that doesn't feel good, start way, way, way smaller. If you had told me a year ago that I'd be teaching podcasting, I would have been like, what are you talking about? But what happened to me, Jeannie, is that, I did get to that 2.5% in 5 months, actually. And then a few months later, it's jumped to 2%. And now I'm getting, reels going viral, and I'm getting, I'm growing rapidly, and all this is happening. And I just, again, having that quiet 8 minutes or so in the morning, it came to me one morning that I had to share this. I had to share how I did it with others, because podcasting is not saturated. It's not even close to being saturated. YouTube is a lot more saturated. Podcasting has plenty of room for all of us. And so I just felt compelled to help other people and tell them exactly what I did, and just show them this is how I did it. And if I did it, you can do it too. Like I just felt compelled to teach people. So as you know, you're one of my first students. I'm wrapping up my first class, and I'm launching my second class in mid-February. And
Congrats.
and then I have a private Facebook group, which is closed at the moment, but it's opening back up again January 1st. And in that class, you have access to all the tips, everything that I've learned, anything I can help you with. I have a technical expert who answers all your technical questions. It's $5 a month. You cannot beat that, to have all that support, to have, and that's the other thing in podcasting is that, one of my secrets was collaboration. I'm a natural collaborator. So I was constantly reaching out to people and in groups. And so things like Facebook groups are super powerful for collaborating, and helping each other. At the end of each interview, like if I were interviewing you today, I always say, Jeannie, who can you share with me who you think would be a great guest and a great fit on my podcast?
I think that's awesome.
That's after, after we've stopped recording, but who do you know? Because it's all about connections. Podcasting is actually, they've done studies, it's the most collaborative industry of all of them, because everything that you do in podcasting, you both benefit.
Wow, that's an amazing place to be because I love collaboration. As a matter of fact, one of the most recent interview I did, the guy wrote the book about collaboration, the whole collaboration model.
Love it.
That's amazing. I interviewed him, so that's kind of brings me memory of talking with him, how important collaboration. If he feels that collaboration could be everywhere, anywhere in the workplace. And
Absolutely.
but now, but you saying that podcasting world is the collaborative more than any other industry. I'm thrilled that I'm part of it now because I love it. We had the whole interview about collaboration model. That's it. That's pretty much what we talked about. So
yeah, and no doesn't mean no forever. Like, you know, that's, you know,
At that
getting over
time.
rejection that was a big hump for me, you know, like the very first person that I reached out to that was like, no, I'm not coming on your podcast. You're a nobody. They didn't say it that way, but you know what I mean. When you're starting out, you're not a big name. And, you know, but you know, the more you ask and the easier it gets, and no isn't personal. You know, there's a million things going on with that person in their life, and no doesn't mean no forever. You know, I interviewed the top recruiter in New York City. She isn't currently, because she's branching out into some other things with helping women, but at one time she was the top recruiter in New York City, which meant cold calling people all day long, and you know, them saying no all day long. And I said, how did you ever do that? How did you do that? And she said, well, no doesn't mean no forever. Just means no today. Like, I give them a
Not
call
right
3 months
now.
later,
Right,
6 months later,
Kristina?
not right now, not right now, you know, maybe later. And that has taught me so much too. Like, you know, no doesn't mean no forever.
Yeah. Speaking of keep going, what is keep you going? What's motivating you to continue doing podcasting and growing in that industry? What's keep you going? Now you're doing the class for people to learn. What motivating you to continue on that journey?
So my goal was always in the beginning of my podcast was, look, I was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. I went through a lot of hard things, and yet I've become a very successful podcaster. If I can do it, you can do it too. So my goal is to get women's voices out there in the world on my podcast, interviewing women, asking them how they overcame their biggest challenges or how they built that company to the $1 billion level. How did they do it? And that gives, you know, other women the opportunity to believe in themselves and believe that if they can do it, I can do it too. You know, and then there comes a time when people will actually say to you, I listened to such and such an episode. Like, I had a woman say to me, I listened to Aaron Ramsey's episode, which aired in June, and she said it literally changed.
Wow.
It changed my life. And that's my goal. Like, that's what keeps me going is I think that the thing that makes human beings the most happy is when we're helping other people. When we're helping them, that makes us the most happy, when we feel like we have a mission and a purpose. And so I'm trying to help, in particular, women. Not that I don't love men, I really do, but I think that sometimes women have more self-esteem issues, and you know, we are kind of programmed to be more passive, and you know, again, I'm not talking about being aggressive. I'm just talking about taking charge of your future and living authentically, because then you're going to be happier. I want to see happier women out there. I think there's a lot of unhappy women out there. So it keeps me going.
Why do you think they feel unhappy? What's they're afraid to get out
They're not, because they're not living authentically. There's a lot of reasons. I mean, no, you know, in a lot of cases, it could be that they had a really great career, like I did, and then they had a child or two, And for me, I was just so thrilled to be a mom that I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So
Yeah.
I made that choice,
Okay.
but society doesn't value that choice so much. And
Not as
I
much,
had to
huh?
kind of, I don't think so. And I think we're working on that. It'll get better, but it's still a problem. So I think that, you know, what happens a lot of times with, in particular, stay-at-home moms, their kids grow up and then they're like me. They're like
What's next?
feeling kind of unsettled. What's next? I don't know. And then they get stuck and they don't come out of that. Some of them don't come out of that stuckness.
That's sad.
Right? Yeah, and so I'm helping with that too. Like, let's get unstuck here, like let's figure out ways to get to live your best life.
That's it for part 1 of Kristina's story. I hope you'll join us next time for part 2 of this incredible conversation. See you!